All right. Looks like we're live, so appreciate that. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Fielder. I'm the field CTO here at Arctic Wolf. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today for this. We're just going to have a quick conversation here on what's keeping security leaders up at night. This is a global perspective, and it's coming out of some research that we've done. And we're going to just take a look at a few of the stats that we found in this report. We would love it if everyone took a look at the report. And that is my alarm going off telling me that we are going live now. So everyone, please ignore that. We would love it if everyone took a look at this report. But, we have somebody on that really had a say in this report, and I'd love to get his perspective on some of these results. So, who we have with us right now is Ian McShane. He's our Vice President of Strategy. So, Ian, if you take a moment to introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, what's up? And I think I bring the global element, as you can tell by my accent not being American. So excited to be here. Thanks, Chris.
Cool. And what we're going to talk about again is, we really did this research in, well, what is bothering the security leaders that are out there right now, leaders in this space, and what is it that they think could be fixed and really altered in the market right now? Background on me, I've been in cybersecurity for 22 years now, 23, somewhere in there. I got to sit down and actually figure out the date at some point. A majority of that time was actually a hands-on keyboard. So, I know what it's like in the field. I know what these pain points are like, and it's really unfortunate. And Ian, from what I understand, you've spent some time in the field as well, right?
Yeah. Similar numbers to you. I think we must be the same age, Fielder. So about 20 some odd. I mean, I saw you raise your eyebrows. I'm clearly grayer than you are, but yeah,
No.
20 some odd years. I started in a hilarious job working in a call center, doing kind of 24-hour support for essentially dial-up networking and email. So if you've ever used Outlook Express, I hate it and I hope it never reappears again.
Oh, fun. Yep. So cool. Let's get to our first slide here and talk about one of these stats. This is just talking a little bit about the report itself. So, after a year of geopolitical and economic uncertainty, Arctic Wolf conducted a survey of 900 plus global IT security decision makers. First thing to point out there is that, yes, when we reached out and did this survey, we didn't just want to say, hey, if you fill out this survey, we'll give you a free t shirt and get a bunch of, results back. Instead, we wanted really quality data here. So, we reached out to people that are making these decisions and can tell us what they're actually seeing, in a day-to-day position. And we did this in late 2022, and it says to understand the executive perspectives on a wide array of cybersecurity and business issues entering 2023. So before we get into the stats, Ian, is there anything that you want to start off with, what are things going into this year that are really concerning you or you think we need to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think I know surveys like this are almost 10 a penny in the industry, but I find them really interesting. It's certainly from when I was a practitioner, 10, 15 years ago, because it always seems like the grass is greener on the other side. Like you go to work, I don't know if you remember this kind of thing where you're looking through a stack of, alerts or NetIQ events or, cluster service rebooting, all these like alerts, and you're thinking, why does it suck to be in this position day in, day out? And then you go to conferences and you hear people talking about how they managed to, improve quality of life by automating this, that, and the other. And I'm like, wow, how stupid am I? So these kind of things are really refreshing to understand, when you hear other people saying, yeah, I'm struggling with the same things everyone else is. And although the grass may look greener on the other side, it's often not. And I think I can answer like your actual question, which was like, what are people coming into this year, or should they be thinking about? It's one word, and it's ransomware. It's still ransomware, whether that's the initial access before ransomware, if that's the detection of or prevention of ransomware in general. That to me is the number one threat, regardless of who says there's been less incidents of ransomware. That sounds great, but there are still people that are victims. So telling them or letting them hear that ransomware is on the decline doesn't help those people very much.
That's interesting you say that. We recently did at Arctic Wolf a report that was in parallel to this, and that was our 2023 trends report. And what we found in that data was that we spoke to, almost just as many security leaders that are out there. And we asked them, what's bothering you and what are you concerned about? And it was moving beyond the entry vector of, exploits and business email compromise and phishing and
Mhm.
all that. It didn't matter how they got in. Ransomware is what they were all concerned about. It's
100%.
it's not how they got in the door. It's what they do once they're in the building, right?
Yeah, like
And
there's two things, right? If you think about the question I get asked quite a lot is like, what should I be focused on? And there's the two areas, and we just highlighted them. Like, so we can shut this thing down now. We're done, right? But the first thing is like initial access. If you're going to invest money, it's like, how are people getting in? How are the adversaries? How are the attackers getting into your environment? And then number two, if you feel like you've done enough there, or you can't do enough there for whatever reason it is, it's the next stage, figuring out how to identify when someone is moving about in your network, how they're doing something they shouldn't be. How do you get from, detection to prevention? How do you get from not knowing anything, not having any visibility, let's say, to really understanding what looks like normal in my environment, and how do I find the outliers?
Absolutely. We'll move on to the next here in just 1 minute, but I just want to highlight something you said, and it's something I'm seeing as well. Is we're now moving into an area where I think a lot more organizations are starting to understand that they put their all of their eggs in the prevention basket for too long. That idea of I'm going to prevent everything and buy all these prevention point solutions, and then going,
Mhm.
okay, well they didn't actually prevent it, and now I don't have any way to
Yeah.
detect it and respond to it.
I mean, this is the thing. And if I look at kind of next year, one of the frequent conversations I've had in the last 6 months is how focused everyone is on detections. Like, we've had this like cyclical thing of like everyone focused on prevention, then everyone focused on detection, and then someone invented math again, and we had machine learning, which was going to solve everything. So everyone was back to preventing and predicting bad things before they happen. And now we spent the last, as an industry, spent the last like 5 years really saying detection's the most important thing. We've got endpoint detection and response. We've got network detection and response. And I'm saying response quietly because that's the bit that no one seems to care about or invest in. It's like, we've got all these detections, we've got all these alerts, and nobody really is, number one, capable of responding to everything that comes up. And number two, I think the industry in general is not helping anyone by not focusing on making that response easier. Like, it's great when your point tools, like you just said, have got the ability to run a remote shell, or fire some scripts off to do some reaction or some investigation. But if I, as a business owner, can't hire specialists to take care of that, am I any better off than if I didn't have those detections in the first place?
Absolutely. Yep. These tools that if they send an alert or if they, fire off an email, they consider that a response and they can throw a DR at the end, right?
It blows my mind. It makes me sick.
Let's go to the next one here and actually take a look at one of these results. So, economic headwinds are battering businesses. So, 62% of respondents have had to lay off employees in the past year. This is really unfortunate. We've been very lucky at Arctic Wolf, in that we have
Touch
yet
wood.
to face this challenge. Yes, but a lot of colleagues in industry can't say the same thing, and
Mhm.
it's really unfortunate. It's affecting so many that are out there. I think as a whole, we'll get through this. But right now, a lot of organizations are struggling to say, I need to cut budget, and they see layoffs as a way to do that. So, looking at when this is broken down, 43% of out that are out there had to cut individuals from sales and marketing. I think this is unfortunate, kind of short sighted, because if you're cutting individuals in your sales org, who's making money for your business? And
Mhm.
like that's, it's unfortunate, but I can see if you're struggling, you might have to do that. But the next one here really kind of blows my mind, and that's 40% cut from IT and security. And everybody in the industry has been talking about in IT in general, but specifically in security, this, the security skills gap and the shortage of people actually doing the job. And then to cut individuals in this area to maybe meet some budget requirements, it's kind of mind blowing. So, do you think, as I said, I just want to get your opinion that this is really short sighted? And is there like an option here that they could do instead of cutting people in this area?
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's probably hits home for almost everyone. Like, I'm sure everyone, certainly I know a lot of people that have been affected by downsizing or layoffs. You see it almost every day at the moment, which sucks. Is it short sighted? And it depends what lens you're looking at it through, right? So, as much as I like to stick it to the man, like, let's have a bit of empathy for business owners at this point, right? They're trying to make a decision that can support their business going forward, and if they have to cut 10% of their workforce that saves the other 90% from going bust, then I can see that perspective too. And one of my favorite phrases when I have a question I'm not sure how to answer, and that's a great example here, is like, when you work in security, when you work in cybersecurity, you're working in a game of risk, right? You're trying to balance the risk, and all we can do as security professionals, unless we own the company, unless we own that final decision, is present the risks and the possible outcomes. And so we can say, yeah, like 100%, it seems short-sighted to lay off security staff when the risk of a security incident could tank the business as well. What you would hope is that the business owners and the decision makers themselves are taking that into account and saying, do you know what? Yeah, that's a risk we're willing to take, and it sucks.
Yeah. It is unfortunate, and I feel bad for everyone that is in that position. What I would say is, you said, if you are going to go down this path, make sure that it is a calculated risk, as you said, um,
Exactly.
and weigh the future, because there's a good possibility if the staff that you cut, you can't simply rehire them. Once they're
And
gone,
there's
they're gone.
yeah, there's a lot to be said about how a company, and this is way off topic now, but there's a lot to be said for how a company like composes itself during those things. I think there's
Mhm.
a ridiculous bird site that does a relatively poor job of managing downsizing, and then you see some other good examples. I think HubSpot was one of them, where they were actually taking a very human approach to downsizing and laying off, and making sure they're trying to do the right thing as far as possible by their employees. So yeah, you're right. Like, people, especially in cybersecurity, being such a small industry, people remember.
What I can say is, I hope that as an industry we're able to get through this, and I see that at some point we will. Right now, I think we're
Hmm.
just kind of going through one of the toughest points. So,
Yep.
all right, let's go to the next one here, and a couple ones here that I want to go over. And this one says that, for many, there are concerns that are being faced that are out there right now, right? And one of them is, inflation. Inflation is a major concern. The talent shortage is a major concern as well coming into this year. That one is not unusual, the talent shortage, but it's interesting that it kind of contradicts what we previously said, that, you don't have enough people, but some organizations are looking at cutting people. And all these are kind
Can
of
I?
things that yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, can I take the perspective of the
Yeah,
big bad corporation at this point? Because
sure.
I think when people talk about the talent shortage, it's really has too high a description. Like, I think the talent shortage isn't necessarily a talent shortage, right? It's not a shortage of people that want to do the job. It's more a shortage of people that can do very specific elements of jobs. Like, we're not saying that there's no one trying to get into cyber, and we're not saying that there's no one hiring for entry level um, jobs. I think where the gap is that bridge between people like you and me, well, people like you that have been in the industry for 20 years and know what they're talking about, and people that are just starting out. Like,
Mm.
there seems to be have been this gulf of like 5 or 10 years where people, well, we didn't see the same numbers of people in cybersecurity, and so the ones that were doing the job over the past 5 or 10 years are now the ones trying to lead the job, and there are not as many doers as there are leaders, if that makes sense. So
It
when
does. It
so
does.
that's how I think about it when people say about the talent shortage. It's not, I don't think there's a lack of people that want to do it. I think there's a lack of definition of what talent shortage really means.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. One thing that really kind of concerns me and concerns me going into the future is I'm seeing this a lot. Organizations are eager to hire people in that mid to upper range of being able to be an analyst, but they can't find people in that area. As you said, they just a lot of times don't exist, or they're like me and you, and they get burnt out and they move into a different area. So what they then do is they take people that are a little more junior, maybe you've only been doing it for a year or two, maybe you're just getting out of training or school, and they stick them into these advanced positions. And they put them in way over their head and then say, well, why did we get compromised? Why are we having difficulties here? I
Yeah.
hired you and I'm paying you this amount. Why am I at risk? And they're not putting them in a position where they could succeed and prosper. And I think that's going to be a major, you know, uh, issue if we keep going here. Just make sure whoever you hire, you're hiring from them for the position that they will be successful in.
Exactly. So there's two things, right? Number one, that's exactly right, and I love that you call that out, because I think especially when you look at backfills, people try to hire the person that just left, not the person that is right for the role. And this is when you see those ridiculous, like, oh, we're looking for a rock star, we're looking for this person that can do all of these 20 things. And what they actually mean is Christopher was able to manage the sim, do some detections, do some research, and he burnt himself out and left. And then they're like, oh well, we're still looking for someone to manage the sim, do the detections, manage the on-call stuff. They're looking for someone to replace that. They're not really thinking about, right, what is this role actually doing? And I've fallen victim to that type of hiring before it, where you're just like, well, this person left, I need the exact same skill set as that. When realistically, you're going to struggle to find it. And then the second part is also, bear in mind, is if you once you've got some experience, it's that it's that age old advice of you'll get a much better pay rise if you move companies. And so you get people that do a job for a year, 18 months, 2 years, especially in cybersecurity where skills are under demand. Your 5% annual pay rise is probably going to be eclipsed by what you can get moving to another company. And now I'm not saying
Absolutely.
that I'm not going to say that every company should be like, hey, we're just going to double everyone's salary to retain them. What I'm saying is there's a lot of factors that you as an organization can't really meet or can't really do too much about to keep those employees. Like, you can focus on employee happiness, you can focus on culture, you can keep on training, and you can give them a career path at your company. But ultimately there are things that are not just tied to cybersecurity, not just like specifically related to the economic headwinds. Like, sometimes people are just going to go and get another job because they get paid more somewhere else, and you've
Absolutely. That
invested a
makes
lot
total
of time
sense.
in training them, so
Go get your money, right?
get paid,
Okay,
get paid.
cool. So jumping back to this stat real quick,
Sorry,
taking
yeah.
a look at no, it's cool. Taking a look at what's concerning people. We're seeing here, cyber attacks, supply chain disruptions, geopolitical tensions, stock market volatility. When I add all these together, it looks to me like it's the perfect storm for more potential attacks in the future. So when we're looking at this, does it look like, okay, we are setting ourselves up for more ransomware, more attacks, supply chain compromises, politically motivated attackers? Like, is this going to be a difficult path ahead?
Yes. Next question.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, yes, of course it is. I think the thing is, like, it's easy. No, easy is not right. The barrier to entry for cybersecurity is relatively low, especially when you think of, like, getting hold of malicious insiders and
Mhm.
potentially being going through all of these things like phishing, going through business email compromise. People can make a good chunk of cash, and then we see the stories of well organized criminal gangs like Conti or whoever, you know, siphoning billions or hundreds of millions of dollars. It sounds attractive, and in a economic climate where there are going to be people that are struggling to make ends meet, I don't think it's going to be outside the realms of possibility that there are going to be malicious insiders for hire. Saying, hey,
Mhm.
if you give me enough money that I can do X, Y, and Z, maybe I'll accidentally leave my credentials somewhere.
Absolutely. Again, people are going to make money one way or another. So,
Get paid.
and
Got to get
and,
paid.
and you brought something up here, so let me hit on this real quick. And this is kind of the last step that I'm going to hit on, and then see if we have anything we want to close with. But in the last 12 months, 52% of organizations said they suffered a breach. Not really concerned there. In fact, I would think that it's probably even higher. And there's a majority of the 48% that said that they didn't, that did suffer a breach and just didn't detect it. Like, that
Mhm.
would be the stat that would be even more interesting to me.
Yeah.
But of the 52% that did suffer a breach or at least admitted to it, over a third of those were hit with business email compromise. This seems to be a growing attack vector and a growing concern. So, I have my own theory on this, but why do you think that business email compromise is continuing to grow?
Because it's tied to credential access. And I think as an industry, again, we've been relatively poor about communicating how people can manage their credentials better. Like, we all we hear is, "Oh, dummy, you wrote your password down," or "Oh, dummy, you've got a stupid password." Like, there's a lot of end user shaming when it comes down to credential theft and stolen credentials, when realistically we don't do a good job of communicating how much your life can be improved by doing something like a password manager. Like,
Mhm.
the other side of it, the other side of security awareness, and that's what it boils down to, in my opinion, is that we focus so much, or sorry, organizations focus so much on, this is important, you need to listen to this, otherwise you can't work here, or this is important to the business. Like, if we flip that around and really, think about how intertwined our personal lives are with technology and with cyber related technology and cybersecurity, it makes it a lot more palatable for folks to try and be willing to understand the risks that face them. It's not, hey, I'm protecting my business, I'm protecting myself. Like, by having a better way of managing passwords and credentials, I'm
Okay.
protecting myself. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think, personally, I think one of the reasons that this is so popular is because it's low risk, high reward. When you think about the amount of data and information that is in your email account,
Hmm.
on top of you could find password information, personal identifiable information, information about your organization. How often is your help desk sending out, hey, critical update or whatever, to your email?
Yeah. Right. I
And
mean, it's
yeah,
a gold mine for open source intel. Like if you can get
absolutely.
into someone's Hotmail or Gmail or Outlook or Yahoo or AOL, whatever, generally generally before you start at your employer, they need to send your DocuSign contract somewhere.
Mhm.
So that's going to go to your personal email address. And so if someone gets access to your personal email address, they start to gather those credentials about where you work. Oh, here's a DocuSign link. I wonder if that's the same username and password as their, you know, the ones I've used to get into their email account. I wonder if their
Absolutely.
password manager credentials are the same. And so you can spider through that way. And again, that's what I mean. Is like everything is intertwined. It's not about protecting, it's not about cybersecurity and good hygiene protecting the business. It's about protecting the individual who, by extension, protects your business.
Absolutely. Intertwined, that goes back to uh, when this was something, testing this out years ago, the way this would generally work, and I believe it still works, is you would go out and for pennies on the dollar buy a password list that was compromised
Hmm.
from a website. And Ian would go and sign up for a gambling website using his work email address, and then he would also have a really extensive password that he would sign up for that account with. And me as an attacker would look at that and go, all right, so I see his work email address and I see this really extensive password. Is it possible that that's a password he's reusing for his account that's tied to that email address? Hey, let's give it a shot and find out. Okay, yeah, I got into his email and I can do an active sync. Now I have access in. Okay,
Hmm.
that's a business email compromise. Done.
Yep.
So, it shows that high reward, low risk. I don't even have to touch the environment sometimes, but it actually gives me a path to then get into the environment. So you have to watch out for that because this is a potential to grow, and this is going to continue to be a problem, especially as this goes more into the cloud and less
Yeah.
on-prem email, more cloud-based email. Which
Exactly. And the
that's the
great
name
thing
of the
about
game
that
now.
example, the great thing about that example is it's touched none of the on-premise infrastructure, none of my work infrastructure, none of the network infrastructure. Hopefully the organization is doing something about, cloud applications and monitoring that. And I say hopefully, but yeah, it hasn't touched anything on premise, has it?
Yeah, I mean, Ian and I both come from endpoint backgrounds, different companies, but endpoint backgrounds. And I think we're both kind of at fault for this idea of endpoint is all that matters. Endpoint security is where you should focus. You should focus on endpoint security in tandem with all of your other security. So anytime somebody says this is the only area you need to focus on in security, end the
Red flag.
conversation. Yeah, move on. You need to look everywhere. So
Yeah.
cool. With that, what I would say is, there's a lot more to this out there. So please, everyone, take a moment and grab that report along with some of the other reports we've done here at Arctic Wolf. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. Ian, great information. I always love talking to you. It was a lot of fun.
Always good talking to you, Fielder. Good times.
So, if anyone has any questions for us out there, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Ian or anyone at Arctic Wolf. We would love to continue the conversation. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thanks.